What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Just a quick input from me here before we commence with the over 2 hour long Darth Magus lore compilation. As you are aware, over the past few weeks we have compiled Darth Magus lore from around the Sith archives on Korriban, Dromund Cast and Zyos, exploring in depth one of the greatest characters in all of fiction, and without question the greatest Sith fighter, and in question, one of the greatest fighters in all of Star Wars history. I truly pour my heart and soul out to you when I say I try every single day to make the most comprehensive Star Wars videos of all time. I'd truly appreciate it if you shared this with a friend who you know is as obsessed with the universe created by George Lucas in 1977 as you are. Tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. It would truly mean the world to me. I'm going to be attempting to upload more in the new year on both my Star Wars, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter channels, the links for which will be in the description, as well as my Minecraft/gaming channel. Anyway, my friends, this is where we part ways. Enjoy the lore compilation we have compiled, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Darth Magus is unquestionably one of the most powerful Sith Lords of the Old Republic era of Star Wars, while not on the lines of some beings like Vitiate, Valkorion, Darth Nihilus, Darth Bane, or Exar Kun. Darth Magus certainly was a ferocious Sith brute through and through. Darth Magus purely embodied everything that the Sith Empire hoped to achieve and wanted to achieve. A merciless killer, a brood. Malgus was the prone Old Republic version of Darth Vader, and one of the Sith Lords that Vader idolized enough to gain inspiration from, alongside a few others. However, along with this, Palpatine also idolized Malgus due to the fact that he wanted Vader to be like Malgus, a hulking brute that could absorb any attack, any damage, feel no pain, be completely immersed in the dark side of the Force more than any Sith had before him, including Malgus. Malgus was exceptionally powerful and skilled, and is widely regarded as one of the greatest lightsaber duelists and Sith swordsmen in all of history. In my opinion, being up there in the top 5 greatest Sith lightsaber users of all time. But how powerful really is he? What was his lightsaber mastery that allowed him to overpower nearly every single opponent in combat every single time? And what were his Force abilities that were claimed to have been greater than even Mace Windu's, with a 16,800 midichlorian count? And why was his Force lightning able to tear through a crowd of enemies? Now, my friends, let us proceed with the video on how powerful was Darth Magus. Starting off with his prone lightsaber training, Darth Magus was an exceptionally talented duelist and was widely considered one of the greatest lightsaber duelists of all time, specializing in using rage and Force fury, as well as his overwhelming brute strength, to best his opponents. Aside from his overwhelming physical stature and strength, which served him well not only in lightsaber duels, but allowed him to overcome nearly all enemies in hand-to-hand combat, Magus also often performed acrobatics to increase his effectiveness in lightsaber combat. His speed was such that a normal human found it difficult to watch his movement during duels. Malgus was shown to employ Jarkai in various battle situations, such as when he employed this style during the retaking of Korriban to murder the Jedi Battlemaster Kalkan Darach, despite the latter's proficiency in the same fighting style and victory over Malgus' own master, Darth Vindicant. Malgus specialized in Form 5 to Gem So, the same lightsaber form that Anakin Skywalker would also use. Darth Magus also specialized in utilizing Ataru form, the same form that Yoda utilized, molding the two forms together to employ acrobatics with his overwhelming physical strength. A ferocious Sith warrior with a tyrannical reputation, Darth Magus relished engaging in combat on the front line, and he was personally responsible for the deaths of several highly acclimated and skilled Jedi Masters. Malgus' strength, rage, and clear focus in a lightsaber duel gave him an advantage, and allowed him to swiftly deprive Kalkan Darach of one of his lightsabers and finally slay the Zabrak Jedi Master. Many years later, during the sacking of Coruscant, a mission Malgus had been told to bombard the Jedi, Malgus managed to impale Master Van Zala in a short but ferocious duel, Zala was often regarded as his most famous kill. Another brief example of this was shown during his fight against Padawan Sahar Katin, where Malgus utilized Jar Kai after taking Den On Or's lightsaber, her own master, after murdering him. Even as he aged and got into his 60s and 70s, Malgus retained his fierce duelist and dueling prowess and managed to both fight against both masters and Padawan simultaneously. Now, let's move on to his Force abilities. Veridun's adopted father, as Veridun was the actual given name of Malgus, stated that his instructors had seen few with his potential in the Force. This would place Malgus alongside many other powerful Force wielders like Mace Windu, and firmly above those like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, and Count Dooku. Malgus utilized a plethora of Force lightning abilities and powers during the sacking of Coruscant to defeat a multitude of Jedi and Republic soldiers, including Saber Throw, guiding it to decapitate multiple enemies at once rather than one, Force Push, Choke, Jump, Speed, and a barrage of furious lightning. Malgus used his emotions, such as anger and his distaste of other beings, to fuel his power of the darkness. Malgus demonstrated the skill and power to handle multiple opponents simultaneously with little to no effort. In one instance, Malgus unleashed a powerful bolt of Force lightning and killed 3 Jedi with it. Malgus himself could tolerate Force lightning attacks better than most others, including Darth Vader and Sidious. During his duel with Sith Lord Adras, Malgus strode through the barrage of Force lightning from his opponent, using his lightsaber and fingers as a conduit, and redirected it back towards his opponent to thrust him off his feet. He perfected his application of Force lightning to a degree from which he could unleash and pioneer an ability known as a Force Maelstrom. During the Battle of Ilum, he demonstrated an application of Tutor Minus when fired by at either the Void Hound, Meteor, Hunter, or Cypher 9, absorbing the blaster fire with one hand. Malgus also performed Force Screams to make his hatred apparent to his opponents. Force Scream was the same ability Palpatine used to stun and briefly incapacitate Kit Fisto, Aegon Kolar, Mace Windu, and Satan, as well as destroy enemy fighters within his range. During his bombardment and raid of the Temple of the Jedi, Malgus unleashed power with an expression of rage which shattered a nearby column of wall, and sent a rain of stones charged through the room when his friend and lover, Alina Dari, was struck down by his most powerful opponent in the region, Zala. Malgus used his ability once again during his raid of the resting place of Adras, making his extreme hatred for him clearly visible by leaving a trail of destruction around him with it during his advance towards his powerful Sith rival. Malgus often used Force speed to augment his physical movements. Despite his towering physical stature, he was not a god. When Malgus engaged Jedi Knight Aaron Lena in a duel, a former Padawan of Venzalos, an observer attempted to watch them, but could not properly discern their movements because of their immense, unquestionable speed. Later on, Malgus used this ability once again while he was rushing towards the hangar in the spaceport to rescue Alina Daru from a threat, leaving the troops accompanying him far, far behind. Despite their training being exceptionally strong in the Force, a midichlorian count roughly 15 to 16,000 as I have estimated, Malgus was proficient in the application of telekinesis. Malgus could counter-push his opponents in midair while they would jump towards him to knock them out in the process. During the duel with Aaron Lena, Malgus demonstrated the ability to lure and hurl multiple objects as missiles towards his opponents. Malgus could also perform Force Grip and Force Crush. On Alderaan, a Zaprak Jedi used the Force to collapse 2 buildings on top of Malgus in an attempt to kill him. But Malgus utilized his immense durability, greater than perhaps any Sith who had ever lived. Stood under the mountain of rubble composed of building parts made of duracrate and steel, preventing it from crushing him with the Force. Malgus controlled and utilized his anger and sharpened his power. He blew the rubble up away from him, sending it crashing in adjacent buildings to kill the Jedi. Malgus also performed a Force Wave attack when he attempted to disperse a large crowd gathered outside a medical facility on Coruscant to check on Daru. The blast shoved everything away from him in all directions. Bodies slammed into each other, walls and windows. The nearby transport lurched, and all the doors of the medical facility broke loose and fell to the ground. On Alderaan, Malgus faced Jedi Master Satil Shan, who would later become his most bitter rival and Grand Master of the Jedi, as well as her allies in single combat, and tolerated heavy firepower and force powers from his opponents, which shattered large objects around him. He was seriously injured, but he survived and felt no pain. Malgus could also hide his presence in the Force. Interestingly, a Jedi in Alderaan used his ability to suppress his Force signature in an attempt to fool and ambush Malgus, but it was ineffective against him. Malgus still managed to sense his presence and foiled his plans, choking him on the spot. Malgus was so strong in the Force, it took various Force users simultaneously to immobilize him on Elam in the new Legacy of the Sith expansion edition to the Old Republic game. Well, my friends, what did you think of this? Darth Magus is my favourite fictional character and by far my favourite Star Wars character. One of the most compelling and interesting characters. I am looking forward to seeing the wrap-up of his story as the Old Republic expansions continue to release. And in the end of his story, he will have a story on par with the plot point of Darth Vader. Well, my friends, Sith comrades, and Korriban archivists, I bid you farewell. I hope you will revisit our databank soon with more knowledge to add to our collection. And I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Darth Magus is undoubtedly the most proficient and powerful Sith warrior and marauder to ever live, being alive during the time of the Old Sith Empire and the Old Sith Wars during the reign of Emperor Vitiate, otherwise known as Valkorion or Tenebrae. Darth Magus, after the Battle of Alderaan and a severe injuring by Satele Shan, similar to Darth Vader and his maiming on Mustafar at the hands of his master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Magus was forced to don a respirator and make most of his body mechanical, but much less than Vader's, as he kept his mechanical legs and he kept his organic limbs. This made Malgus ferocious on the battlefield with even more stamina and rage than any other Sith Lord at the time. Malgus was bred to be a warrior, but was also tutored and studied in the ways of the Force, with a midichlorian count on par with Mace Windu's. Malgus was the pioneer of many Force lightning abilities and was immensely skilled in it, despite only using its blue variation. He was unquestionably, possibly only second to Starkiller in the proficiency with the blue variation of Force lightning, while some consider him to be equal. Today we will be delving in to one of the most dangerous abilities that Malgus created during his time in the Sith Empire, and as the false emperor of the Sith Order after the supposed death of Vitiate. Join us, acolytes, and ensure that you have adorned your Jedi robes and achieved the rank of Master as we delve into the history books, unveil the text, and uncover ancient holocrons depicting the ability of Force Maelstrom. Force Maelstrom, also known as Force Bombard or Force Bombardment, was a devastating and absolutely brutal combination of the Force powers Protection Bubble, Telekinesis, and Force Lightning, all of which the user of this ability would need adept mastery of in order to complete. First, the user would form a Force bubble around their corporeal body, concealing and protecting them inside from any exterior Force attacks or lightsaber strikes. Then, any loose objects, including people, and around the user, including inanimate objects and non-sentient beings like droids, would swirl around the bubble through the usage of telekinesis. Finally, the user of this ability would devastate the objects by blasting them away with a shockwave of catastrophic and devastating energy and a storm of Force lightning, accompanied by a surge of Force lightning and a shockwave of energy using the Force. Darth Magus was the pioneer and proficient in this ability to the highest degree, using it to brutally and mercilessly devastating effect on any unprepared enemy that came across it. Millennia later, Darth Sidious, the greatest Sith of all time and one of the most formidable in Star Wars legends and unquestionably the most powerful in Star Wars canon, used it as a stepping stone to achieve mastery of a much more powerful Force storm in his later years, with an ability that Malgus and Vitiate both used, with Malgus essentially being the stepping stones for Sidious's eventual rise and proficiency and adept mastery over the ability of Force Storm, the most dangerous Force ability to ever exist and one I've made a video on in the past. Members of Emperor Sheev Palpatine's black-cloaked Shadow Guard also used this power, as did the secret Sith apprentice of Darth Vader, Galen Merrick. Well, that was the full explanation of Force Maelstrom. Tell me if you like this video. Ensure that you have force choked the subscribe button. And ensure that your lightsaber has cut down the like button, as it is the only way to achieve the rank of Master. Goodbye, Acolytes, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Greetings, Acolytes of the Force, and welcome back. I have been expecting you. Darth Magus is a titanic Sith brute who is one of our favourite characters to cover here on the channel, in my personal opinion, being the greatest character in all of fiction, period. Unquestionably in Star Wars, Darth Magus was an enigmatic, powerful, brutish, hulkish character who powered through enemy lines very similar and myriad to the way Darth Vader would do many millennia later. Darth Magus seems unstoppable, with his clear rage, brute strength, focus, and almost indomitable lightsaber combat and resistance, including his durability allowing him to resist every single force attack and physical attack he has ever been dealt with minimal to no injury. Darth Magus seems like an impossible foe to put down, a dog that just keeps coming back to life. Malgus uses his dark side attunement and immersefulness in the entire dark side itself in order to sustain his life. Darth Magus has an exceptional array of powers which we have covered in a video, documented the full power of Darth Magus, delegating whether or whether or not he is the greatest fighter in all of Star Wars history. But there is one matter I believe we need to address. This matter is how Darth Magus, in all his wisdom, brute strength, knowledge, ideology, and pure power, was finally put down, while this Sith was not on the level of some such as Palpatine, Vader, and Vitiate. How, in the end, was Dark Lord of the Sith Darth Magus finally defeated? As you could know, in the Old Republic Legacy of the Sith Expansion Edition, Darth Magus has not actually died. But a few years ago, roughly 4 years ago, there was actually a canonical death in Legends for Darth Magus, and I am going to describe it to you right here. I hope that you enjoy our content. We pour a lot of our effort in ensuring that you get the most comprehensive outlook on the Star Wars galaxy possible. I'll see you in the tombs of Korriban as we venture to the throne room of false Emperor Malgus. Our story begins as the Jedi and the Sith have both realized that Malgus has distanced himself from the Sith Order, with Malgus leaving the Empire in a fit of rage after the Empire and Vitiate, under the understanding sway of Revan, who had been telekinetically forcing and persuading Vitiate to put off his invasion of the Republic for over 3 centuries in solitary confinement. Malgus left after Vitiate agreed to negotiate a peace treaty and barter Coruscant, the primary planet the Jedi Order operated from and the home of their temple, which Malgus had just destroyed, in order to gain more land and to put the Sith Empire in power. Malgus was enraged by this and left the Order, fighting Jedi Knight Aaron Lena, a former Padawan of Jedi Master Venzala who Malgus had recently murdered. Darth Magus then proceeded to start up his own organization, recruiting Force sensitives that the Jedi and Sith neglected, that the Jedi deemed not powerful enough in the Force to train, with Malgus unlocking their abilities. Malgus saw, after living in isolation for few years, training few pupils, that with the supposed death of Vitiate at the hands of the hero of Tython, and Vitiate's spirit fleeing to Zyos in order to incur chaos and disruption, Malgus saw his time. He enacted his plan. He went around the galaxy, finding any Force sensitives he could that the Jedi and the Sith had not laid their hands on, creating a fierce army. At the height of his power, there were few in the entire galaxy who could defeat Malgus. One would be the hero of Tython, another potentially Lord Scourge, and one other being Vitiate, Revan, Bastila Shan, and Satele Shan. Darth Magus now was exceptionally skilled, more skilled than he would ever be in all of Star Wars history. With his lightsaber skills beyond comprehensible at this point, Malgus appeared as a blur of crimson rather than an actual mortal man, a shadow motioning through the darkness. In the end, Malgus was causing disruption and igniting the fires of war that was incurring power struggles throughout the entire galaxy between the Sith and the Jedi. The Sith and the Jedi agreed that they needed to temporarily put aside their differences in order to subdue Malgus, and in worst case scenario, kill him. Malgus was unprepared for this attack, which is the primary reason it led to his supposed death. What the Jedi and the Sith did was they plotted, scanned Malgus and where he occasionally went, got trackers to keep tabs on him, spies, various different entities throughout the Star Wars galaxy in order to ensure they knew the exact time and place and where Malgus would be. Malgus was resting in his throne room, currently pondering how he would dominate the galaxy. There were few beings in the galaxy who could match, nevertheless surpass his strength. As far as he was concerned, Vitiate had been vanquished, and he was now the true sole Sith Lord. Revan was soon to be murdered. Revan had been attempting to resurrect the spirit of Vitiate, and Malgus knew that the people would unite against him. The only person he had to worry about now was Satele Shan. So, Satele Shan, leading a strike team of Jedi as well as Sith, roughly around 15, with the Jedi and the Sith each bringing around 7 players to the table. They went in and caught Malgus relaxing in his throne room, catching him off guard in a surprise attack. Malgus reacted as a Sith warrior would and Emperor. He drew his lightsaber and began battering down his enemies, going for the less skilled in order to drive them away and isolate them. Malgus was able to kill up to what we consider to be 5 enemies before he was finally put down. But how did Malgus die? Let's explain it even more in depth. What happened was, as Malgus was presumably fighting Satele Shan, Darth Magus was forced to the edge of a reactor shaft, very similar to how, and reminiscent to how Palpatine in the Battle of Endor, over Endor, fell into the reactor shaft of the Death Star and perished, his spirit fleeing to the unknown regions in order to inhabit a clone body on Exegol. That's the canon version, at least. The Measures version is much more contemplated and complicated, and we are certain to visit it at a later date. Darth Magus was forced into the reactor shaft, exploding in blue energy. With Darth Magus now dead, the Jedi strike team grieved their losses, with the Sith leaving immediately, foregoing their peace treaty, and saying that the war was now on. There is also a deleted cameo that was in the Star Wars The Old Republic Knights of the Eternal Throne Expansion Edition. In this expansion edition, including Knights of the Fallen Empire, we can see that Malgus has been frozen and preserved in carbonite by Vitiate. Malgus' spirit and body seems to be very much intact. So this either means that the past few minutes of explaining his in-depth death to you was meaningless, and that they actually neglected that in the end, or that they somehow, the Eternal Empire, whether it was Arcan, Thexan, Valen, or Valkorion himself, managed to recover Malgus' body and corpse, and managed to freeze him in carbonite, and hanging him up like a trophy on the wall. I can 100% imagine Vitiate in his picturesque and all-powerful, essentially godlike embodiment of the dark side, hanging up one of his most bitter rivals as a trophy, an ornamentary being, frozen in carbonite. Malgus attempted to gain control of the Sith Empire after Vitiate supposedly was killed. And Vitiate, reminiscent and glorious, a heartless, merciless monster, saw that he could insult Malgus even in his supposed death. Of course, this would mean that Malgus would have had to have been unfrozen from carbonite at some point if the chronological timeline of the Old Republic is continuing. Anyway, my friends, what did you think of this video? I am compiling a Darth Magus lore compilation that I'll release sometime in the next few weeks. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. Enjoy educating yourself in the Sith libraries, reading up on HoloNet, studying holobooks and holocrons as we prepare to venture into the depths of unknown space. Next week and next video, we are going to venture into the paws of death itself. Goodbye, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Our time has come. For 300 years, we prepared, we grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power, believing your people were safe and protected. Trusted to lead the Republic, but you were deceived. As our powers of the dark side have blinded you. You assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
Dooku and Darth Malgus, two of the most legendary Sith Lords to ever be abducted into the Order, with Count Dooku coming around roughly 4,000 years before Malgus was death. Malgus was an exceptionally powerful Sith Lord, specializing in lightsaber combat. Malgus was a Sith warrior through and through, as well as Dooku, a noble Serenian noble who had had a 6-decade tenure as a Jedi Master, and then joined the Sith for over a decade, studying under the tutelage of Darth Sidious, one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, and aspiring to become the new public force and main public eye in the new galactic empire, being granted a role as prestigious and honourable as the newly christened Darth Vader. However, neither of these men got to experience their goals, while Darth Magus wanted to achieve the rank of Sith Emperor, after he believed Vitiate had been killed by supposedly the hero of Tython during his millennia-long life. And Dooku wanted and aspired to become the head of the most powerful force in the galaxy and the reigning Dark Lord of the Sith. Neither man ever achieved their goals, with Malgus being named the False Emperor and Dooku being decapitated by Anakin Skywalker aboard the Invisible Hand before the concept of the Galactic Empire was even a dream to him. So, which one of these historical, powerful, and exceptionally skilled lightsaber duelers are the most powerful? Which one has staked their claim as the most powerful? And which one came closer to achieving their goals? Yes, my friends, welcome back to a new episode of our Versus series. This is Darth Magus versus Count Dooku. A warning, there will be no hate in the comment section based on opinions. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I am sure there are a multitude of people who will think that my answer is incorrect for varying reasons. This is just my perspective on things. And also, one of the rules and regulations is that we'll be only focusing on their powers and not how compelling their character arc is or how good of a character they would be. As I'm sure if you have stuck around on this channel, you definitely know who would win. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Let's start chronologically and emerge with Darth Magus. Beginning with his lightsaber training, Malgus was hailed as the hero of Tython. The hero of Tython, widely regarded as the greatest Jedi of his age and prophesied to defeat the Sith Emperor by Lord Scourge, the Emperor's Wrath, who was granted immortality alongside the Emperor, sharing in his immense power. The hero of Tython stated that Malgus' lightsaber form was flawless, with Malgus specializing in an overly extensively strong Djem-So, the most athletically taxing and the most demanding lightsaber form, even more than Ataru. With Ataru you just had to be quick, but with the Djem-So you had to be quick and strong. Malgus was an exceptionally talented duelist and among, or possibly even topping, the greatest lightsaber duelist of his entire age. And it was once stated and inscribed into ancient documents that Malgus once defeated Revan. That's right, my friends, the Revan himself, aboard a space station once during his crusade. He specialized in utilizing rage and brute strength to defeat his opponents. Aside from his overwhelming physical stature and strength, which he implemented and served him well not only in lightsaber duels, but also hand-to-hand combat, like when he employed it in the duel with Jace Malcolm during the Siege of Alderaan. Malgus also often performed acrobatics akin to Ataru, employing some elements of Ataru into his fighting style to increase his effectiveness in lightsaber combat. His speed was such that a normal human found it difficult to watch his movements in duels. A ferocious and terrifying Sith warrior with a horrific, nigh unopposed reputation, Darth Magus relished engaging in combat on the front line, and specialized, like General Grievous and Darth Vader, in taking down Jedi. He was personally responsible for the deaths of 7 highly decorated and skilled Jedi Masters, such as Cal Kandaraj, the Jedi Battle Master at the time, and also Ven Zallo, who was a Jedi Master and widely considered Malgus' most famous kill. Malgus was shown to employ Jar Kai in various situations and mastering it, such as during the retaking of Korriban, where we first saw him in the Old Republic game, where he employed this tactic and style to kill the Jedi Battle Master Cal Kandaraj, despite the latter's mastery in the same fighting style. And recent victory and impaling Malgus' own Sith Master Darth Vindican. Malgus' strength, rage, and clear focus in a lightsaber duel gave him an utter advantage that allowed him to brutalize opponents into submission, allowing him to swiftly deprive Cal of one of his lightsabers and finally save the Zabrak Jedi Master. Years later, during the sacking of Coruscant, widely regarded to be Malgus' most famous and highly decorated campaign, also marking the beginning of his disillusionment with the Sith Order. Malgus was able to fight against Zalo and impale him in a short but ferocious duel. Zalo was often regarded as his most famous kill. Another brief example of this was shown during his fight against Padawan Sahar Katin, where Malgus utilized Jarkai after taking her master Denlam Or's lightsaber, after slicing the latter through the chest. Even as he got older and began to get into his 60s and 70s, Malgus still remained a fierce duelist that managed to fight against both masters and Padawans. Malgus's Djemso tactic was such he was considered on par with Darth Bane. Darth Bane was widely considered to be the greatest specializer of the form ever, and among the greatest Sith swordmasters in Sith history. Malgus was a master at force augmentation, very similar to Darth Sidious, as Malgus utilized his pure rage, the force rage allowing him to bolster an aspect of his physical traits in order to overpower many Jedi in a lightsaber duel. Another example of this was he was able to successfully take over the Sith Empire after the supposed death of Emperor Vitiate, the emperor that Malgus adhered to so strictly. Malgus was able to duel Venzalo's former Padawan and come out on top. However, he did allow her to live due to the fact she allowed his lover, whose name is a Twi'lek slave, who conveniently was one of Malgus's slaves. Her name was Alina Daru, and due to the fact that she allowed her to live, Malgus decided it'd be best as a show of gratitude to let her go. Now, let's move on to Malgus's Force talents. Veridon's adoptive father, who was a biologist in Star Wars, stated that his instructors tell that they've seen few with his potential in the Force. Due to this quote alone, we can assume Malgus's Force capabilities were beyond the average Sith, with the average Sith being roughly having 10,000 midichlorians. I deduced Malgus roughly had 16,000. And Malgus utilized a variety and plethora of Force powers during the sacking of Coruscant to defeat a multitude of many Jedi and Republic soldiers who had the audacity to stand in his path, including Saber Throw, guiding it with telekinesis to impale multiple enemies, Force Push, Choke, Jump, Speed, and Lightning, using lightning in order to tear through 2 Padawans and 1 Jedi Knight. Malgus utilized his emotions, such as anger and distaste of others, to fuel his power of the dark side, and demonstrated the skill and power to handle multiple opponents simultaneously with little to no effort, proving his superiority to Sith Lord Adras, his political rival. In one instance, Malgus unleashed a powerful torrent of Force lightning and killed 3 Jedi with it, incinerating their flesh. Malgus himself could tolerate Force lightning to a ridiculous extent. During his duel with Lord Adras, Malgus strode through the barrage of Force lightning from his opponent, using his lightsaber and fingers as a conduit, utilizing Tutaminis and redirecting it back towards his opponent to fling him from his feet. He perfected his application of Force lightning to such a degree, he was considered to be the second most powerful practitioner of the ability at the time, tied with Darth Revan, and considered to be inferior, however likely superior, with Vitiate. Vitiate considered to be the most powerful practitioner alongside Sidious in all of history. He perfected his application of lightning to a degree from which he could unleash a Force Maelstrom, which he demonstrated during the Battle of Lag Lung, a perfect application of Tutaminis when fired at either the Void Hound, Meteor, Hunter, or Cypher 9, absorbing the blaster fire with one hand. Force Maelstrom was utilizing telekinesis, shield bubble, levitation, and also the Force lightning ability itself, with Malgus generating a bubble, then rotating multiple enemies with telekinesis before unleashing a swirling storm of lightning from his hands to incinerate them. Malgus also performed Force screens to make his hatred apparent to those opponents, as well as destroy enemy fighters within his rage, blocking out eardrums and shattering columns. During his raid of the Jedi Temple, Malgus unleashed power with the expression of rage, which shattered a nearby column of a wall and sent a shower of stone shards throughout the room, when his friend Alina Daru was struck down by the most powerful opponent in the region, Zalo, who Malgus considered the only one worth his attention. Malgus used this ability once again during his raid of the resting place of Adras,
making his extreme hatred for him clearly visible by leaving a trail of destruction around him with it during his advance towards his powerful Sith rival. Malgus often implemented the Force speed ability to augment his physical acrobatics. When Malgus engaged Jedi Knight Aaron Lena in a duel, an observer attempted to watch them but could not properly deduce and see their movements because of their immense Force augmented speed. Later on, Malgus used his ability once again while he was rushing towards the hangar in a spaceport to rescue Alina Daru from a threat, leaving the troopers accompanying him far behind. Beings powerful in the Force, a midichlorian count estimated to be around 16,800 midichlorians per cell, surpassing even Mace Windu. Malgus was proficient in the application of telekinesis. Malgus could counter-push his opponents in midair while they would jump towards him and knock them out in the process. During the duel with Aaron, Malgus demonstrated this ability to hurl objects as missiles towards his opponent, and could perform Force Grip and Force Crush on his enemies. On Alderaan, a Zabrak Jedi used the Force to collapse 2 buildings on Malgus in an attempt to kill him. Malgus stood under the mountain of rubble composed of building parts made of duracrate and steel, preventing it from crushing him beneath with the Force. Malgus controlled his anger and sharpened his power. He blew the rubble up and away from him, sending it crashing in adjacent buildings. Malgus also performed Force Wave when he attempted to disperse a large crowd gathered outside a medical facility in Coruscant to check on Daru. The blast shoved anything away from him in all directions, and bodies slammed into each other, breaking walls and windows. The nearby transport lurched, and all the doors of the medical facility broke loose and fell to the ground. On Alderaan, Malgus also faced Jedi Master Satele Shan, his pure rival, in single combat, and tolerated heavy firepower and force powers from his opponents, which shattered large objects around him. He was seriously injured, but he survived and felt no pain. Malgus had also concealed his presence within the Force. Intriguingly, a Jedi in Alderaan utilized his ability to possess his Force signature when he planned to ambush Malgus, but it was ineffective against him. Malgus still managed to sense his presence and foiled his plans. Malgus was so strong on the Force that in the end, in the Old Republic's latest expansion editions, it took various Force users at one time to immobilize him on Elon. Now that we have properly deduced Darth Magus' amazing and nigh unstoppable powers in the Force, let us truly decide who is the more powerful, and let's search, starting off with the Jedi Master, now Sith Lord, Count Dooku, a man
and
exceptional,
his
unrivaled power that was exemplified by his Sith aliases of Tyrannus. Dooku was a highly skilled lightsaber duelist even in his old age. During his tenure as a Jedi Master, he was known as one of the Order's finest and most experienced swordsmen. It was said that Yoda was his only superior by Revenge of the Sith, and that Mace Windu was his only equal in the art. On Geonosis, Dooku was able to fairly effortlessly defeat and best both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, one immediately after the other. Though he noted Anakin's dueling skills the second time they duelled were considering and progressing immensely, and then go on to fight Yoda himself. Dooku was able to contend with Yoda, but elected to retreat when he was unable to best his former master in the opening stages of the duel. He would often prove to be the equal and even superior to Skywalker and Kenobi, even as their skill evolved during the Clone Wars, and his skill decayed due to his old age. Dueling Skywalker on several occasions, proving to be his superior, merely toying with him, until Skywalker was powerful enough to eventually overcome the Count. It is revealed in the EU Legends continuity that Palpatine told Dooku to take it easy on Anakin throughout the Clone Wars, meaning the Dooku that we see the entirety of the time all across the Clone Wars TV show Attack of the Clones, until the final stages of Revenge of the Sith and their duel aboard the Invisible Hand, was merely taking it easy on Anakin, and he only died because he realized he had made a mistake and gone easy on him in that last duel, and he was at a stage in the duel where he could not go easy anymore. Among the most skilled swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen, Dooku was a practitioner of the second form of lightsaber combat, Makashi. Makashi was designed specifically for lightsaber-to-lightsaber duels, and was rendered useless and was considered obsolete in the High Republic, when Jedi were most likely to face a battalion of blaster-wielding mercenaries and opponents. The style's rarity gave Dooku an unusual advantage when engaging in lightsaber confrontations, as few of his enemies were seasonally trained to defend themselves against it. Makashi relied on the utmost precision, swiftness, economy of movement, grace, and elegance that matched Dooku's stature as a Serenian noble. Dooku's curved hilt lightsaber was designed especially for this. Dooku mastered Makashi to such a degree he was considered the finest practitioner of the form ever, essentially becoming the Obi-Wan Kenobi for his own lightsaber form. He was also capable of effectively making up for its many weaknesses, with his weaknesses primarily being the fact he was weak against multiple lightsaber-wielding opponents and was able to compensate for his lack of use against blaster-wielding foes. In addition to his formidable, nigh unopposed lightsaber skills, Dooku was also very knowledgeable and skilled in the use of the Force, despite having a relatively low midichlorian count for the Jedi High Council, considered to be roughly around 14,000, 2,000 less than Malgus, who I mentioned prior. He demonstrated exceptional prowess and strength in the field of telekinesis during his duels with Asajj Ventress and his escape from Hondo's pirates. He displayed a prowess skill at using telekinesis in finer, more precise tasks, such as disarming Ventress like his teacher Yoda did in Season 1, Episode 1 of the Clone Wars, while also levitating her against the wall during her failed attempt to assassinate him with Savage Opress. He was even able to telekinetically manipulating people's motor skills, such as when he force choked while simultaneously forcing Turk Falso to take out his blaster and shoot his comrade, proving he could accomplish multiple force tasks at once. Dooku clearly proved to be the superior to Darth Maul, Palpatine's former apprentice, who was stated in the Clone Wars to be more powerful than Kenobi at that time, while he performed a similar feat when he made Padme Amidala aim and shoot at Beck Lois against her better judgment. Dooku was also highly skilled in the use of Force lightning, although in the movies and in the continuity, he was one of the weakest practitioners of the ability, as he only specialized in the blue variation, using it as both a means of torture and execution, and was able to use it in conjunction with telekinesis, usually to send a person flying with his lightning, or to even levitate his opponents while using his lightning on them, like he did against Anakin Skywalker and Savage Opress, as he demonstrated on Ventress and 2 other Night Sister assassins, and a battalion of clone troopers multiple times. While Dooku was powerful in the usage of Force lightning, his usage of it cannot even compare to Malgus. Malgus' Force lightning mastery was among the greatest the galaxy had ever seen, and like I stated, he was considered to be third and only inferior in the ability of Force lightning to Vitiate and Darth Revan at the time. Vitiate and Darth Revan, however, are both titans of the Force, and 2 of the most powerful practitioners of this ability ever instilled into their respective orders. So, in the end, who do I truly believe is more powerful? The Serenian noble Count with his tenure as a Jedi, or the powerful, strong, formidable Sith warrior that is Darth Magus, my favourite character in all of Star Wars? Warning, this answer will not be biased. So, I would like to present an analyzation of this video before I actually inform you of what my answer is. Starting off, I would like to inform you that Count Dooku is the superior in lightsaber combat, despite the fact that I think Malgus is among the top 10 best lightsaber duelists that ever lived, and even is superior to Palpatine in the art in terms of raw skill. I just cannot ignore the fact that Dooku's saber skills were considered to be superior or equal to Mace Windu, and only inferior to Yoda. He was even stated to be able to disarm Darth Sidious, one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, in a lightsaber duel, and made Sidious fearful and scared at his own lightsaber capabilities compared to his apprentice in Dooku's. Malgus' skill with a lightsaber, while formidable, ultimately is the perfect matchup in this match, since we will be taking Dooku in Attack of the Clones, his essential prime, and Malgus from the most recent Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic game adaptations. We shall be seeing that Dooku has the dark side, and Malgus is the most experienced and talented he has ever been. So, with these facts laid out, who's the better lightsaber combatant? Like I stated before, I believe it is Dooku, but I have to give the edge to Malgus as well. While I believe Dooku is a better duelist overall, due to Dooku's advanced age in Attack of the Clones of 79 years old, having been born in 102 BBY, over a century before the Battle of Yavin, and nearly a century before his death. Count Dooku's Makashi mastery allowed him to outduel nearly any opponent, including Mace Windu twice, and was able to duel with Yoda to a standstill. Despite this, Malgus' overwhelming physical strength that he employed in his lightsaber combatancy and altercations would ultimately prove to be the one thing that would let Dooku down. Dooku's old age meant that the Gemso was his weakness, and due to the fact Malgus was one of the finest practitioners of the form ever, I have to give this category to Malgus, although I do believe that overall Dooku is a better duelist. I just cannot ignore the fact that Malgus' Gemso mastery, considered to be one of the greatest in all of history, could not defeat Dooku's Makashi, which failed to generate kinetic energy and failed to generate momentum, which the Gemso specialized in. Also, due to Dooku's age, Malgus could quite easily launch a series of power strikes that could overwhelm Dooku, landing in possibly a swift strike that could wound the Jedi Master. There was also one point where Dooku was a Sith Lord, not a Jedi Master, and after he had rebelled against the Order, where he actually utilized his lightsaber in a more clumsy motion, actually shearing a portion of his skin off with his lightsaber blade during his duel aboard the Invisible Hand, as we can see portrayed in the Revenge of the Sith novelization. Now let's move on to Force abilities. Personally, I also have to give this to Malgus. Malgus, who was an anti-hero essentially, not good but not bad, was capable of utilizing Force lightning in a plethora of ways. He was considered one of the greatest practitioners of the ability ever. Along with this, he could use Force augmentation to essentially fight forever, use telekinesis, and I highly believe that Malgus could effortlessly employ Force Maelstrom to defeat Dooku. So, with all these facts laid out on the table and our cards settled, I give you the ultimate victor is Darth Magus. And I'd say that Darth Magus was 9 times out of 10. The only way I could see Dooku possibly employing a tactic that could defeat Malgus is if he was capable of shearing through his armor, possibly getting lucky with one of his lightsaber strikes, or if Malgus got tunnel vision, or if Dooku utilized the Force to implement it into his surroundings and best Malgus. Other than that, there is no feasible way I can see the Count of Sereno, in his advanced age, despite being at his prime, defeating Darth Magus in a lightsaber duel. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Do you agree with my pick and selection? And do you think that Darth Magus is more powerful than Count Dooku, or the other way around? Be sure to share your opinions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, I've grown from a man to a god.
would prevail in an altercation if Dark Lord of the Sith and renowned Sith warrior Darth Magus, as well as the fallen chosen one Darth Vader, went up against Darth Maul and Savage Opress, the brothers of Dathomir. While I'll give you a bit of a disclosure at the beginning, and Malgus could probably solo this duel with his superior lightsaber combatants, it's not what we are here for, and I'm trying not to be too biased because Malgus is my favourite character. So let's display the feats, strengths, pros, and cons for each of these beings. Starting off with Malgus, he defeated Jedi Battle Masters Ven Zallo and Kalkan Durach, both light years before his prime in lightsaber combat and the Force. He had the ability to take a bomb to the face, however this forced him to wear a respirator for the rest of his life, and enhance his cybernetic prowess. It should be noted Malgus had tremendous levels of endurance, so much he was able to survive 2 buildings falling on top of him. He was able to stalemate the Outlander, Valkorian's most deadly adversary, and ragdolled 2 of the Outlander's Jedi comrades. He had the ability to hurl 3 Jedi with Force lightning and scar them to the point of obliteration. He had the ability to shatter columns with his Force screams and send shards flying across the room. He had the ability to bring Darth Nox, a Dark Council member, to his knees with his catastrophically powerful Force lightning. Outdueled Satele Shan, the descendant of Darth Revan, a multitude of times, and proved to be a superior in lightsaber combat. With a few Sith, he conquered the Jedi Temple, the first to ever do so in all of galactic history until Darth Sidious, and was on the Dark Council for a while until he rebelled against the Empire. Now for Vader. He had the ability to bring down an AT-AT with the Force. With a few hundred clones, decimated the Jedi Temple, survived being burnt alive by 3,000-degree lava rivers, and as Anakin defeated Count Dooku, the Master Swordsman, and killed him. Now for Maul. He killed famous Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn in combat, basically stalemated Darth Sidious, until Sidious used the Force in lightsaber combat, killed a Wampa with his bare hands, outdueled Obi-Wan Kenobi and proved to be superior in the Force and lightsaber combat several times, killed Pre Vizsla, the renowned Mandalorian soldier, in combat. Now, lastly, we have Savage. He lasted a while against Sidious before being killed. However, Sidious was mainly toying with the 2 Zabrak brothers. Force choked both Ventress and Dooku at the same time, shattering their Force barriers, killed his brother by choking him. Savage doesn't have many feats. Who wins? This is a clear win for Team Number 1, with Vader being the strongest canonical Sith Lord, even above Darth Sidious. He would deal with Savage in no time, and while Malgus would most likely solo both these beings due to his ferocity, strength, and Force prowess, being even above Vader. I'm trying not to be biased as I stated earlier, but in the end I truly do believe that Vader and Malgus would utterly decimate Maul and Savage 9 times out of 10. The only way that I could see Maul and Savage taking the dub, actually, no, there is no way Maul and Savage could take the dub. Malgus and Vader are just too much of an elite troop and would make the battlefield carnage. Goodbye, acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
You were deceived. And now your republic shall fall.
Such words were uttered by not only one of the most powerful, ferocious, and brutal combatants, but none other than one of my favourites, Darth Magus. Darth Magus is unquestionably the most powerful and ferocious Sith warrior and acolyte to ever live, being the famed Sith warrior and war general, essentially being the Darth Vader of the Old Republic. Malgus was notable for his proficiency with the Force and immense skill in lightsaber combat, making him one of the greatest Sith lightsaber duelists, even above the likes of Palpatine, in all of Star Wars history. Malgus wore a respirator after sustaining brutal injuries at the hands of Satele Shan and after the Battle of Alderaan, a battle during the war known as the Great Galactic War. However, today we will be noticing and delving into the ancient Sith holocron of what was Malgus' most famous achievement. Malgus was a man that bore many achievements over his long lifetime, but the most famous of these achievements is an achievement that only one had achieved afterwards, and only one, as far as we know in Star Wars lore, will ever achieve. The secret treaty that the Sith had been plotting essentially came out of nowhere,
and carved a path of destruction that would eventually decimate the Jedi Order, and Malgus was the frontman of this assault. Before we continue on the lore video of one of the greatest Star Wars characters, and my favourite character in all of fiction to ever exist, I would like to remind you that if you wish to ascend to the rank of Master and have the combat skills of Darth Magus and the force prowess of Darth Sidious, then strike down the subscribe button. It is your destiny. Now, with that out of the way, students of the Force and acolytes of this great channel, prepare to learn about the in-depth lore of the sacking of Coruscant. The earliest recordings and documentations revolving around this event, the plans for invasion, were speculated to begin as early as 3660 BBY. In the aftermath of the Rim campaign, the Sith Order planned to take advantage of the thin spread of Republic forces around the galaxy, which were primarily stationed in outlying systems along the Imperial border. By order of Supreme Commander Rons, the Dark Council decided that the strike force was to be led by the prominent Sith Lord and Master known as Darth Angral, while a smaller secondary force, led by the Sith Lord Darth Magus, the cunning warrior and most famous military tactician and Sith warrior, known for his brutal and ferocious lightsaber proficiency and mastery, would lead an attack on the Jedi Temple, dispatched directly to it, with a group of 50 Sith Lords. Although Malgus, in his pride and arrogancy, wished to lead the assault on the temple alone, Angral, the leader of the assault, insisted that their fellow Lord Adras, a political ally of his and a rival of Malgus's own, serve as a second-in-command in the attack. Before any of the Sith could proceed, however, the defense group protecting Coruscant had to be disabled. The task fell to the Mandalorian Shai Vizsla, who travelled to the Eucalyptus in advance of the Sith. Darth Magus also travelled to the world prior to the battle, accompanied by a slave and lover and eventual wife, Alina Daru, a stunning Twi'lek with icy blue skin. Malgus, who for years in the Sith Empire's military had expertise in organising surprise attacks and secretive movements, orchestrated and began working on a plan for entering the Jedi Temple that involved hijacking an NR2 gully jumper, depositing 50 Sith warriors and lords directly into the building, including Malgus, Daru, and Adras. This plan required that Malgus serves as a distraction for the Jedi Order, and more particularly Ben Zallo, while the vessel entered the airspace of the Temple District, not wanting to draw attention to the incoming Sith bombardment. As they waited for Vizsla to complete her assigned objective and for his warriors to get into place, Malgus toured Coruscant with Daru, admiring and criticizing the world one final time before its inevitable destruction. Meanwhile, the Peace Summit was being held on the core world of Orizon, a planet that had previously come under attack by the Sith Empire. The Republic delegation, led by Senator Paran Amris and Jedi Master Dal Nalar, met with the Imperial delegation, led by Sith Lord Darth Varas, to insert a possible cessation of hostilities around the galaxy and violence. Barras maintained the facade of a peace-seeking diplomat early in the negotiation processing, which all made the more believable by the Sith's withdrawal from their offensive in the Minos cluster as the peace conference began. However, Darth Magus received word on Coruscant that Vizsla had compromised the defense grid without alerting the Republic authorities and Jedi Order, and that the dropship was in position to begin its descent. With that, the Sith unleashed their assault on the world.
We grew stronger, while you rested in your cradle of power, believing your people were safe and protected. You were trusted to lead the Republic, but you were deceived. As our powers of the dark side have blinded you, you assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
Darth Malgus,
the Dark Lord of the Sith, and the most ferocious Sith warrior in all of history, was finally bringing his vision on Coruscant that he had accomplished 20 years earlier to fruition by abolishing the Jedi and destroying the Galactic Senate. He was enacting everything that the Sith sought to achieve ever since they had begun construction. Malgus and Alira Daru traveled to the Jedi Temple on foot, approaching the ancient edifice via the professional way. As they neared the temple's main entrance, the two were surrounded by Republic soldiers and guard who had been assigned to guard the building while most Jedi were away, either fighting with the brutal tactics of the Sith or participating in the peace talk negotiating on Alderaan. Malgus quickly dispatched all of the security personnel effortlessly with his lightsaber mastery and continued to go into the core of the temple itself. Meanwhile, Shae Vizsla infiltrated the temple's ziggurats through an exposed hatch in order to join the Sith in their fight within and conflict with the Jedi. The Mandalorian continued to battle Republic security forces in the temple's upper levels, while throngs of curious Jedi confronted Malgus and Daru approaching, unwavered below. Padawans gathered on the upper mezzanines to see the Sith as he was confronted by a cadet of 6 Jedi Knights, led by one master, Ven Zallo, whose dueling prowess, at least during this time, Malgus considered to be an equal in the Force, but not in lightsaber combat. As Zallo and the Knights approached Malgus to bar him from penetrating any further into the temple, the Sith warriors within the Republic dropship piloted the vessel directly into the vast doorway, shielding the main entrance. The dropship smashed through the large gate that served as the temple's main entrance and hangar, and continued to reduce much of the entrance hall to rubble, causing the pillars to crumble down in clusters of stone. The careening ship and the huge mass of rubble it formated crushed into a number of Jedi before coming to a halt directly behind Malgus and Daru. The dropship's hatch flew open to reveal the 50 Sith warriors, led by Lord Adras, as well as several Imperial soldiers, who ignited their crimson blaze, illuminating the craft's dark interior. After disembarking from the craft, the Sith forces were attacked by dozens of Jedi in defense of their own temple and sanctuary. The Jedi and Sith fought a vicious, brutal, massacring battle, battling one another with the Force and their kinetic energy lightsaber blades, while Daru darted through the heat of the battle, assisting her lover. When the Twi'lek slave was nearly killed by a Zabrak Padawan, Malgus intervened, the blood of the Dark Knight running through his veins, fueling his intentions and power, and killed the Jedi. Meanwhile, Adras cut a swath through the fray, using his telekinetic powers to throw the few surviving Republic soldiers across the hall. As Malgus loosed bolts of Force lightning against a number of his opponents, Vizsla revealed herself and engaged Republic soldiers with rockets and a flamethrower, armed on her Mandalorian equipment, such as Cad Bane, Jango Fett, and Boba Fett would use many years later. Immersed in the infinite knowledge and power of the dark side of the Force, Malgus continued on to slay many of the temple's defenders, while his Twi'lek lover provided support for him by using her dual blaster pistols and provided support for the other Sith Lords. Malgus' primary goal and mission during the melee combat was to hunt down and kill Zallo in the maze of bodies, whom he felt was the only combatant worthy of his attention and time. Zallo was meanwhile making headway against the Sith warriors, killing a number of them and rebuffing Adras's attacks. When Malgus finally located the Jedi Master, Daru attempted to assist him by firing at Zallo with a barrage of blue lightsaber bolts like ice. This tactic, however, backfired literally, and Daru was deflected her bolts, bouncing off Zallo's emerald blade, shooting them back into her body before throwing her against a column with the Force that had collapsed. Zallo's attack on Daru enraged Malgus, who unleashed a Force scream that toppled some of the surrounding architecture of the formerly renowned and beautiful Jedi Temple. The Sith Lord and the Jedi Master closed the distance between one another, killing any opponent who crossed their paths. Upon finally meeting, Zallo and Malgus entered into a fierce duel, fighting one another back towards the processional way, although their duel was interrupted by fellow Jedi and Sith, who desired to intervene and take the title of killing a renowned duelist for themselves. The two defeated all of their other opponents with ease, using the Force and funneling it through their body, with Malgus deeply immersed in his rage, as a Sith warrior always should be. They focused on one another. Zalo was able to use his lightsaber prowess to defend against Malgus for a time and evade many of his attacks. But the Jedi Master eventually succumbed to Malgus' dueling prowess and kinetic energy that was generated by his own style of the gem so, quickly felling and eventually falling to the Sith Lord's power, who thrust his lightsaber through Zalo's abdomen and chest. With their leading master dead, the Jedi Order's numbers were quickly decaying, and their remaining numbers defeated. Among the Jedi who fell were a pair of married Jedi Knights, the Traguda Roliand and Yalia Zavros. The skirmish won, Sith secured the temple and destroyed the defense group mainframe that lay within the structure before Adra signaled to Malgus and Angral that a strike had been a success. Angral's naval forces entered Coruscant space and were hailed by Orbital Security Station 6, a Coruscant security space station monitoring all incoming traffic to Coruscant. Femi, a Twi'lek aboard the station, did not recognize the vessels of the Sith and their dreadnoughts, and addressing the incoming Sith warships in request to the clearance code, Darth Angral responded viciously by ordering his admiral to open fire on the station, thereby killing Femi and everyone else on board the craft. This fleet, led by Angral's flagship, Darkness, pushed forward into Coruscant's own atmosphere and began ravaging the cityscape with a barrage of attacks. As Mark IV Supremacy-class starfighters, B-28 Extinction-class bombers, Sith battlecruisers, and Imperial war droids raised the Temple District, descending in a void of chaos down upon Malgus and his fellow warriors sat at the ruined entrance of the Jedi Temple and watched the galactic city that had stood as the beacon of the Republic fall finally under Malgus' own leadership. That was the greatest feat ever accomplished by Sith warrior Darth Magus. Darth Magus, as I have stated multiple times, is one of my favourite characters in all of Star Wars, and my favourite character in all of fiction. With his vicious lightsaber proficiency, Malgus was renowned as one of the greatest duelists of all time, and later, Palpatine and Darth Vader would recount his texts, with Palpatine wanting to gain inspiration, and have Vader become a monster similar to Malgus. Well, my friends, I hope that you have ascended to the rank of Master and have learned more about the lore surrounding Darth Magus. Goodbye, Acolytes, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Legendary Sith Lord Darth Magus is undisputedly one of the most complex, conflicted, and greatest characters of the Old Republic era. In my opinion, there is no character in the entirety of the Star Wars universe, or the fictional universe for that matter, that can even stand toe-to-toe with Malgus in terms of pure raw character potential. Malgus has had a character arc on par with that of Darth Vader, compelling, starting off as the most dedicated follower a Sith Lord could ever achieve. Darth Magus worked his way up in the Emperor from a mere child named Veridon to a biologist stepfather on the planet of Dromund Kaas, after murdering his master and some of his first Jedi in Kalkendarat, the Jedi Battle Master, and Darth Vindican, his own master for showing weakness. Malgus went on to, alongside Lord Adras, lead the assault on Coruscant, causing a battalion of 50 Sith Lords to bombard the capital of Coruscant, destroy the Jedi Temple, and utterly ruin the light side of the Force, plunging the galaxy back into an era of darkness. However, after this catastrophic event that would have marked the end of the entirety of the First Sith and Jedi War, known as the Great Galactic War, Darth Magus did something that many did not expect. He openly expressed that he hated the Sith's leader. This Sith's leader was none other than perhaps the most powerful Sith of all time, Darth Vitiate. He not only expressed that he hated Vitiate and loathed his ideologies, but he left the Sith Order and strived to create his own new order. So, my friends, let us break down why. Why did Darth Magus despise Darth Vitiate so intently? And why did he leave the Sith and vow to destroy them? In order for us to gain a full comprehensive knowledge, we're going to have to journey to a novelized version of the Deceived trailer, which is a deceived trailer that takes part right before Malgus actually initiates the conflict by launching a Sith battle cruiser straight into the heart and hallway of the Jedi Temple. Malgus is touring Coruscant, enjoying the beauty and radiance the planet provides, before, as his mind sees it, it is all obliterated. Malgus would eventually lead the assault, becoming very successful in his assault and decimating every Jedi there, killing claimed Jedi Master Venzalo, who Malgus believed was a powerful Jedi at the time. After this, Darth Magus transferred his lover, Alina Daru, to a hospital and asked the Sith Lords to give her the maximum amount of protection and medical capabilities that they could offer. However, Alina Daru was denied her medical treatment and sent to a low-level city hospital. Malgus immediately went to check up on her and ensure that she was progressing along safely, murdering thousands and possibly even more civilians as he went, unleashing force wave after force wave in his rage. Darth Magus truly loved Alina and would have done anything for her, and seeing her in pain and not getting the pristine medical attention he knew she deserved was the first straw. The final straw came when Malgus was ordered by Lord Adras, who was the commanding Sith Lord of the entire operation and essentially the puppet master of it, ordered Malgus to go aboard one of the Sith dreadnoughts that orbited the planet, to ensure that no Jedi starfighters attempted to liberate their control on the world. Malgus begrudgingly agreed after ensuring Alina was given the proper medical attention, and Malgus then waited for hours on end, waiting for the planet Coruscant, which he believed would have been annihilated by a Sith war fleet, to be destroyed. However, this was not met, as eventually Malgus learned that the Sith and the Jedi were conspiring a peace treaty to end the war. This was the final straw. Malgus believed that the Sith Empire was meant to rule the galaxy, and the dark side to impose its tyrannical regime across the entirety of the galaxy, sneaking out and completely obliterating any foe in its path. Malgus believed that the Sith Empire was the tool which he enacted his torment. And now, for the first time in his life, he saw its flaw. Vitiate had been blinded by Revan. Revan had been in captivity for the last 3 centuries, working away at the immortal Emperor's mind, who had lived for over 1,000 years. Revan was convincing Vitiate, persuading him to put off his attack on the Republic, which ultimately saved the entire galaxy, unknown to Revan at the time. Malgus resented Vitiate for this, as he did not know that Revan was the one that was secretly enforcing his will upon the immortal Emperor. At this, Malgus left the Order, vowed to destroy them. Malgus believed that the Jedi and the Sith were very similar. They both used the Force to gain greater power, while the Sith were greater and more powerful than any Jedi could ever hope to be. Malgus believed that the Sith had a lot of flaws. He believed that the Sith, like a Vitiate, were too egotistical, and despite their immense power, were foiled into signing a peace treaty when the entire grip of the galaxy was at their fingertips. Malgus resented Vitiate for this. His entire life he had looked up to the immortal Emperor, wanting to become as powerful as him one day, like an idol might look up to their favourite artist or hero. And now, Malgus saw Vitiate for what he truly was. He did not care about the maliciousness, the malice, the power, the malevolence that Vitiate commanded his foes, and the carelessness he held for everyone in the Empire. Malgus only cared for the Empire, and now, because of Vitiate's acts, it was all gone. This is why Malgus left the Order. He left the Order he desired afterwards to create a new order, one that would perfectly allow him and personify him to become the true Dark Lord, becoming the false Emperor Malgus in the process after the supposed death of Vitiate at the hands of the hero of Tython. He was to be, however, reincarnated into the body of Valkyria, and the Eternal Empire would purge the galaxy of both the Jedi and the Sith. Malgus, as we have most lazily seen him in the Legacy of the Sith Old Republic Expansion Edition, is a holocron that gives him access to the names of every Force-sensitive child around the galaxy, allowing Malgus and showing us that he is building up an army to combat any foe. I truly love Malgus' character to the very core of my being, and if I had to pick one character to be for in all of Star Wars, it would unquestionably be Lord Malgus. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Did you enjoy the Darth Magus lore? We upload weekly now due to the fact that I'm managing multiple channels. If you wish to learn more about the Harry Potter universe, head over to the Harry Potter channel called Hogwarts Castle and subscribe to that and share it around with your friends. Share this video with your friends if you know they are obsessed with Star Wars as you are or enjoy the content. If they wish to learn more about Vitiate, tell them they know where to find me. Now, my friends, I bid you farewell. Be sure to check out my Harry Potter channel, Hogwarts Castle, and Lord of the Rings channel, One Channel to Rule Them All. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Legendary Sith warrior Darth Magus is unquestionably the most powerful Sith warrior of all time, with Darth Magus staking his claim as a ferocious, vicious, savage, merciless, and utterly ruthless enemy on the battlefield, a pure brute and tactical genius who was capable of engineering various strategies against the Jedi. Malgus relished in combat and on the battlefield, and loved fighting on the front lines. He enjoyed having the pristine resources he required to conquer his enemies, and at almost every single turn, Malgus never was defeated. Never was defeated, although he did have a few points where he was bested, such by Satele Shan, a multitude of Jedi Masters, a Sith and Jedi strike team, and few others. Malgus remains the most powerful Sith warrior in all of history, and one of the greatest lightsaber duels to ever live. But there is one thing that I believe we must turn our attention to that is quite peculiar and enigmatic when surrounding Malgus, an eerie aura that we need to cleanse. Malgus, as many of you may know if you're a die-hard Darth Magus fan like myself, actually had a lover, or a wife. This originally came about when Malgus, originally being abducted into the slave order and chosen as a Sith apprentice by his master Darth Vindican, came across a slave Twi'lek girl. This slave Twi'lek girl was called Alina Daru. Alina Daru was an exceptionally attractive female Twi'lek who was a slave girl. Malgus, upon seeing her treatment, murdered her captor, and she pledged herself to him. Malgus enjoyed this, as he had a scheme. Over time, the two began to foster and conceive a romantic relationship. Ended up with a passionate and intimate relationship over the course of their lifetime. However, in the end, Malgus was forced to put the Sith Empire in front of his very own love of his life, and eventually ended up assassinating her. But why is this? What events transpired to this catastrophic heartbreak within the ferocious, almost unbeatable Sith warrior that was Darth Magus? And why did, in the end, he had to defeat the one person that he cared for most? Today, we are going to be answering this very question. Starting off, we need to understand the events that transpired up to this. Malgus had just finished destroying the Jedi Temple on Coruscant during the sacking of Coruscant, along with Sith Lords Lord Adras and Darth Angral. Darth Magus led a brutal assault against the planet Coruscant, bombing the Jedi Temple, incinerating all Jedi, and leaving them to ruin. burying their corpses, as Malgus awaited for the Imperial fleet to unleash a barrage of bombs upon the planet's surface. Although these bombs never came, during the fighting, Darth Magus' wife, Alina Daru, was injured heavily with 3 blaster bolts to the chest by Jedi Master Ven Zallo, Malgus' bitter rival at the time. Malgus ended up killing Zallo and avenging Daru. Daru, while not dead, was still extremely injured, and he ordered her to be taken to the highest form of medical aircraft that they currently possessed. However, this was denied due to the fact that Darth Angral was on Lord Adras being Malgus' primary political rival in the Sith space, and the person he would one day kill. He was on his side, and denied Daru the treatment that Malgus had desired, eventually causing Malgus to flip into a rage and almost sever Adras and Angral's head. Although he was much powerful than both of them, Malgus could not do that to his superiors, so he went to the hospital where Alina was shunned, just because she was married to what they appeared to be a madman, who showed compassion and seemingly weakness. Malgus immediately went in to check on her, and then later, a few days after, Jedi Padawan and now Jedi Knight Aaron Lena, who was formerly the Padawan of Jedi Master Ven Zallo, the same Jedi Master that Malgus had slain during the sacking of Coruscant, had retreated back to Coruscant. With the Sith overconfident, she was able to slip through their blockade of the planet that they were using while they bartered and bargained with the Jedi for relinquishment of Coruscant, now that the primary Republic Navy and Jedi Order was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and decimated. Aaron Lena took Alina Daru hostage, and with Alina Daru hostage, she wished to goad her master's killer, which in this case was Malgus, to her so she could murder him. Little did she know what she was getting herself into, and how powerful the Titanic brute she was going to face. She ended up actually putting up a good fight against Malgus. However, as Malgus was about to raise his culling crimson blade, preparing to sever the young Jedi Knight's neck, Malgus remembered something. He was not merciless. He understood honor and loyalty. He saw Alina Daru, and he primarily saw her alive. He saw that she had been given appropriate medical treatment to at least keep her alive, to satiate Malgus' rage, and to stoke his fear and concern. For this, and for keeping Daru alive, seemingly not in any worse conditioning than she was previously, Malgus decided to let Aaron Lena go, allowing her to leave one final time. Malgus allowed her to leave while he tended to Daru. He knew the thoughts brewing inside his head were logical ones. He knew what he had to do, but he didn't know if he had the strength to do it. Malgus knew that if Daru were to survive, Angral and Adras, who were now proven to be politically advanced allies, would unquestionably not only tease him, but disrupt his reputation, dislodging it from its rightful place as one of the top of the Sith Empire. They would possibly even get him kicked off the Dark Council, due to the fact that compassion is one of the most morally frowned upon things in the Sith ideology, and primarily the worst thing a Sith can have in the Sith Code. In the end, Malgus was eventually forced to put all that aside, all his love for Daru that he had over the years, all the care that she had given him, installing his respirator and his hulking suit of armor, loving him ever since he was in his 20s, loving him for over 30 years. Malgus had to shun all of that in one final culling sweep of his blade. Malgus ignited his lightsaber and impaled Daru in the chest, instantly killing her. Her limp eyes rolled up in her head for the last time. Malgus felt a bittersweet fire enrage in his stomach, igniting it, the flames of Daru's death slowly becoming insatiable. Malgus's rage had just augmented 97,000 times. Malgus now carried a burden of fury. He was completely relinquished from the Empire. He left the Empire shortly afterwards. Malgus only wanted Daru, but now she was gone, because he needed no fears. He could not have a weakness, or other Sith and Jedi would use that against him. That was something he could not have occurred. He was the greatest military tactician at the time, and certainly one of the greatest Sith lightsaber duelists, if not the greatest lightsaber duelist at that point in history. And yet Malgus was completely undone by the death of his beloved slave girl. In the end, Malgus constantly had the fire of Alina Daru's death burning inside him like a ravenous hunger, very similar to Darth Nihilus' Force wound. In the end, Alina Daru was Darth Malgus' greatest victory. Alina Daru was Malgus' greatest sorrow, but in death, she was his greatest weapon. She had stoked the flames of the dark side within him, fully immersing himself in the dark side. Malgus fled the Sith Order, relinquished his titles, and once again became the false Emperor shortly after, with the presumed death of Vitiate. In the end, Alina Daru was the source of Malgus' rage, and the reason he became truly the main titanic brute of darkness. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Greetings, friends. Welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you. Today, as we have for the past few weeks, we will be covering the greatest character in all of Star Wars history, that being legendary Sith Titan of the dark side and warrior in Darth Magus. Darth Magus obviously being one of, if not the most famous Sith warrior of all time, and a Titan of the dark side, being essentially unbeatable and indomitable on the battlefield as both a general and a frontline soldier. Malgus both relished and detested murdering other beings, as he believed them beneath him, but he loved the thrill of battle, loved murdering people, and viciously pushing them into death. Malgus mercilessly paved his way through many beings through his time, mercilessly murdering Jedi as he saw them as inferior, effortlessly murdering clone troopers utilizing his near unparalleled lightsaber mastery through Form 5 to Gem So, and his plethora of Force abilities, including Force Maelstrom, Force Lightning, Force Grip, Force Crush, and so on and so forth. Darth Magus utilized a constellation of unique strategies in order to defeat his enemies. However, one of the most critical and vital things about Malgus' actual physical appearance is his respirator mask being installed after the Battle of Alderaan. But this begs a question for many of the Old Republic fans who are not as much embedded into the lore as we are. This is the video for you. If you are interested in Darth Magus, how did Malgus get his respirator mask? How did Malgus, in all his power and seemingly invulnerability, require a breathing device that made him akin and the Old Republic variation of Darth Vader? Well, my friends, let us open another holocron and discover this very question by questioning the wands of Mortis and the scholars of the dark side. Now, my friends, let's begin. To start off, I would like to note that Darth Magus first sustained this injury through a multitude of different injuries. Darth Magus originally got an injury during the Battle of Alderaan, the beginning of when he would require his respirator. During this battle, Malgus was run at and approached by very brave clone commander and later Supreme Commander Jace Malcolm, who would soon foster a child with Jedi Grandmaster Satele Shan. Jace Malcolm ran at Malgus, shooting a multitude of rocket blasts at him, 3 to be exact. While Malgus was able to use telekinesis to divert the first 2, he was unable to thwart the third one, with it smashing into him, slightly blackening his face. Despite this, Malgus felt absolutely nothing, no pain, only pure, brute rage and undiscerned focus. Afterwards, Malgus swiftly deprived Jace Malcolm of his weapon, and after the clone trooper foolishly attempted to use hand-to-hand combatancy against Malgus, Malgus swiftly nearly executed him utilizing Force Lightning, knocking him unconscious. After the arrival of Jedi Master Satele Shan, who was, in my opinion, the most powerful Jedi that was currently active on the field at the time, and who would later rise to the occasion and become the Grand Master of the Order, arrived.
After Satele arrived on the battlefield, Jace Malcolm swiftly recovered after he was about to be executed by multiple Sith commandos. Satele then went on to fight Malgus, with Jace coming in to aid her by grabbing a stun grenade and propping it right next to Malgus's face. In the end, this also only blackened Malgus's physique, seeming as if his veins had been scorched to death. Malgus then proceeded to spit on the ground, not feeling anything, and though his armor reeked of steam, coiling upwards like snakes of smoke, slithering into the air, Malgus felt no pain. After this, Satele Shan, seeing an opening presented by Jace Malcolm, manifested a pure force bubble. This force technique was currently known as Force Burst. She unleashed a force burst of catastrophic power, expressing her force sensitivity she had inherited from her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather in Revan and her great-great-great-great-grandmother in Bastila Shan. She unleashed this corporeal ball of energy and severely injured Malgus, causing an entire mountain to topple down on top of him. Shards of rock jutted out in various different edges and methods, and almost murdered Malgus. However, despite this, Malgus felt no pain, and though he was badly injured, he refused to gain medical treatment. He demanded by his slave and lover, Alina Daru, that he be taken to where there were nearest Jedi and conflict. Alina Daru, after attempting to convince him otherwise, eventually coincided and aligned herself with his vision. Through this, Alina took Malgus to the ruined city of Alderaan, a city of Alderaan. After this, Malgus engaged two Jedi, brutally murdering one by utilizing the Force after they attempted to preserve and suppress their Force signature, concealing them from Malgus's Force attunement and his Force abilities, not allowing Malgus to detect them and allowing them to ambush Malgus. How fools the Jedi were, and how far had they fallen. This marked the Jedi's descent. Malgus Force choked one, brutally utilizing his brute strength to utterly cripple him. Then, the next one, driven into a momentary lapse of fury and anguish, ran at Malgus with his lightsaber elevated. Malgus then proceeded to instantly incinerate him, utilizing his Force lightning abilities, severely scarring him, causing burns and boils to sprout up all over his flesh. However, what many do not know, as this took place in the novel known as Deceived, which takes place from Malgus' point of view of not only the Battle of Alderaan, but also the Battle of Coruscant and the sacking of Coruscant. The primary reason that Malgus required a respirator was due to an injury that he acquired during the Battle of Alderaan's aftermath. The two Jedi, who believed to have conquered Malgus, threw down twin buildings due to the fact they had been wrecked and reduced to rubble, down upon Malgus, nearly flattening him instantly, with only Malgus's pure brute rage and utter determination, and complete lack of pain and agony, allowing him to preserve his body, utilizing telekinesis to make the building hover above him. Dust then induced itself into Malgus's lungs, causing him to unleash a spur of coughs, infecting him. Malgus had been severely injured, but he did not know it because he didn't feel pain. Even so, he pushed on and continued to murder the two Jedi, as I stated before. Malgus literally threw the two buildings off him, utilizing the Force, stressing his immense Force attunement once again. This is why Malgus required a respirator, due to the fact that the injuries he had acquired during the event known as the Battle of Alderaan, which took place in the cinematic trailer for the Old Republic Hope, forced him to be able to wear it. Alina Daru then took care of him and catered for him, nurturing him back to health using various methods. Although Malgus initially repulsed and detested her advances and concern for him, he essentially embraced it eventually, seeing as the sooner he was back out on the front lines, the sooner he was healed. Well, my friends, what did you think of this breakdown as why Malgus, who is currently the thumbnail for my whole YouTube channel as a whole, and in my opinion, the greatest Star Wars character of all time. A compelling and interesting character. Why he needed a respirator that made him think and feel like an Old Republic version of Darth Vader himself. Well, my friends, this is where we part ways. I hope you will have time to visit the memorial held for Malgus on Alderaan and his brutal service there that was conducted by the Sith. This is where we part ways. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away, acolytes, and avoid the Dragon of Zakul.
Greetings, acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you. Darth Magus is undisputably and unquestionably one of the most famous characters in all of Star Wars, and probably the most famous character from the Old Republic era. On the level of popularity, such as Revan, Darth Magus has amassed a huge following from fans since its debut in the Old Republic cinematic trailers. Darth Magus was a Sith warrior through and through, powering through the enemy ranks and possibly becoming the greatest Sith war general, tactician, and lightsaber duelist in all of Star Wars lore. Darth Magus' lightsaber skills were unparalleled during his time, and some have stated that he was even greater than the acclaimed Swordmaster and Swordmaster Emperor Sheev Palpatine, the Galactic Emperor of the Galactic Empire. Darth Magus had notable feats such as defeating Venzalo, tearing through 3 highly esteemed Jedi Knights, using Force lightning, incinerating their flesh and killing them instantly, sacking the Jedi Temple on Coruscant during the sacking of Coruscant, and going rogue after learning that the Sith Emperor Vitiate, unknowingly being influenced by Revan, had decided to spare the Galactic Republic and not orbitally bombard it like Malgus had been hoping. Darth Magus was quite possibly the first incarnation of Darth Vader, the Fallen Chosen One, although his command over the Force was not as great as the Fallen Chosen One. Today, I am going to educate you and indulge you in the knowledge surrounding why Darth Sidious, possibly the most powerful Sith Lord up to his time, and after that, wanted Darth Magus as his apprentice. As I stated prior, Darth Magus' lightsaber skill was unparalleled, acclaimed to being even superior to Darth Sidious, possibly one of the most powerful Sith of all time in terms of lightsaber combat, an exceptionally talented duelist specializing in Degem So, the same style that Anakin Skywalker used to brutalize Dooku into submission aboard the Invisible Hand. He specialized in using rage and brute strength to defeat his opponents, aside from his overwhelming physical strength, which served him well, not only in lightsaber duels but also in hand-to-hand combat. Malgus often performed acrobatics and employed usages of the Taru, the same form that Master Yoda would go on to master, to increase his effectiveness in combat. His speed was such that a normal human found it difficult to watch his movement in duels. Darth Magus was able to telekinetically guide his lightsaber using the Force. He was personally responsible for the deaths of several highly skilled Jedi Masters, believed to be one of the greatest war generals and military tacticians of his time in the Sith Empire. Malgus was shown to employ Jarkai in various situations, such as during the retaking of his Korriban, where he, along with his master, the pure-blooded Sith Lord Darth Vindican, fought Kal Kandarat and his Padawan Satil Shan, the same Jedi that would go on to be the Grand Master of the Order and Malgus' bitter rival. Despite Malgus' proficiency in Jarkai, he was able to beat Kal Kandarat, despite the latter's proficiency in the own form. Years later, during the sacking of Coruscant, Malgus managed to impale through the abdomen Jedi Master Venzalo in a short but ferocious duel. Zalo was often regarded as his most famous kill and very powerful. Another brief example of this was shown during his fight with Jedi Padawan Sahar Kateen, where Malgus used Jarkai after taking Denlam Orr's lightsaber, killing him. Even as he began to age and get into his 70s, Malgus still remained a fierce and nigh unopposed duelist that managed to fight against both Masters and Padawans simultaneously. Malgus' Force abilities were not to be discounted either, utilizing a variety of Force powers during the sacking of Coruscant, such as employing Force lightning
to kill 3 Jedi at the same time. Malgus himself could tolerate immense Force lightning attacks and was able to harm the Outlander, the legendary hero that toppled the Eternal Empire, with his Force lightning usage. He perfected the application of Force lightning to a degree where he could pioneer and unleash a Force Maelstrom, making a shield bubble using the Force around the user, telekinetically lifting up multiple targets, and then blasting them and incinerating them with Force lightning. Darth Magus was possibly the most powerful Force user, aside from Darth Revan and Darth Vitiate of his time, and is comparable to Galen Merrick in scaling of Force users. He was able to use during the Battle of Ilum. He demonstrated an application of Tutuminus, the ideology and principle of absorbing Force lightning or one's lightsaber blade when fired at by either Voidhound, Meteor Hunter, or Cypher 9, absorbing the blast of fire with one hand. Darth Malgus was a Sith warrior through and through. On Alderaan, Malgus also faced Jedi Master Satele Shan and her allies in single combat, and tolerated heavy firepower, such as being exploded by a rocket, having a stun grenade blow up straight in his face, being thrown into a mountain. This did not waver and enrage and numb pain Malgus. Malgus went on to kill 2 Jedi and have 2 buildings fall on him. However, despite his immense tolerance to pain, he was still required a respirator after this duel. Malgus was so tremendously strong in the Force in the newest iteration of the Old Republic game, Legacy of the Sith, it took various Force users simultaneously to immobilize him on El-Om. Malgus could also hide his presence in the Force using Force concealment, an ability that Palpatine and Darth Plagueis, under the guise of Senator Palpatine and Hego Damask, would increasingly use. Intriguingly, a Jedi in Alderaan used his ability to suppress his Force signature when he planned to ambush Malgus, but it was not effective against him. Malgus still managed to sense his presence and Force choked him to death. Malgus also was proficient in the usage of Force Wave when he attempted to disperse a large crowd gathered outside a medical family on Coruscant to check in on Alina Daru, his slave wife. The blast shoved everything away from him in all directions, and bodies slammed into each walls and windows. The nearby transport lurched, and all the doors of the medical facility broke loose and fell to the ground. He being strong in the Force, with a mid-chlorian count possibly on par with that of Mace Windu's. Malgus was proficient in the application of telekinesis. Malgus could counter-push his opponents in mid-air while they would jump towards him and knock them out in the process. During a duel with Aaron Lena, a former Padawan of Van Zala, who he had recently slain, Malgus demonstrated and depicted the ability to hurl objects as missiles towards his opponent. Malgus could also devastatingly affect and perform Force Grip and Force Crush, 2 devastatingly powerful Force powers. Darth Magus eventually wrote a journal containing about the battle on Korriban and many of his other great achievements that was documented and later recovered by Darth Sidious during his tenure at the Galactic Empire. So, in concluding, why does this make Darth Magus the ideal Sith for Palpatine, and why did Palpatine desire him as an apprentice? In short, after sustaining severe wounds on Mustafar, Palpatine desired Darth Vader, with his cybernetic enhancements, to become essentially a replica of Malgus, just more proficient in the Force. While he could not use Force lightning as Malgus could, Darth Vader eventually accomplished this, becoming a pure warrior, a monster in lightsaber combat, even eclipsing Malgus' skill. Darth Sidious employed this and emphasized this point. He wanted his apprentice to be like Darth Malgus, to the point where he gave him the journal that contained Malgus' siege of Ord Radama and his various sieges and tenure as a Sith warrior. He, however, left out the part that Malgus eventually betrayed the Sith Empire due to the fact that he did not want Vader to form any ideas within his head. Darth Sidious was incredibly powerful and even stated that if Darth Vader had have been more severely wounded on Mustafar, and even with his wounds, if Darth Malgus had have been around during the time of Anakin Skywalker, there was a very high chance that he would have rather left Anakin there to burn and shrivel in his death, and chosen Darth Malgus as his new apprentice. Darth Sidious desired Vader to become a pure monster, not an heir to the Empire at all, but a piece to be moved around, such as Darth Malgus was.
Vader and Malgus both believed and noted that there was nothing they could solve without the usage of a lightsaber. However, they still acknowledged the use of the Force, with Malgus pioneering a new Force ability that would have turned Darth Vader to pieces using Force lightning. Well, my friends, that was the entire reason why Darth Sidious wanted Darth Magus as his apprentice, and why, if he had been around during the time of the Republic's downfall and the Galactic Empire's rise to prominence as the main galactic government, he might have sidestepped the newly christened Lord Vader and chosen Malgus as his new apprentice. What did you think of this review on Darth Malgus? And what do you think of this character? If you haven't watched my other videos on the channel, you know Darth Magus is my favourite character in all of Star Wars lore. His ability to tank and resist various Force techniques and various objects, such as Satele Shan's Force Burst, is an incredible feat. Goodbye, Acolytes. I hope that you are well, and do not find yourself on the opposing end of Darth Magus' savage strike today.
Greetings, friends, and welcome back to our archives. Researchers have been recording a plethora of documents related to one Sith Titan and dark side imbued brethren, Darth Magus. Darth Magus being one of the most prominent, powerful, and hulkish and physically imposing Sith in all of galactic history, and unquestionably one of the most powerful in the Old Republic era. The False Emperor, the Sith Lord, and the greatest military Sith tactician who ever lived. Darth Magus was a brutish Sith general who led his Sith warriors in a brutal amount of crusades across the galaxy's history. Throughout the galaxy's history, Malgus played an important role, being the false emperor after the supposed death of Emperor Vitiate at the hands of the hero of Tython, and beginning his own Sith organization disassociated from the Jedi and the Sith. Malgus was a monster in both lightsaber combat and possessed one of the highest Force sensitivities that the Old Republic and essentially all of Star Wars Sith have to offer, with Force-sensitive midichlorians roughly clocking in to around 16 to 17,000, being even superior to a being such as Mace Windu. Malgus's instructors stated that they had seen few in their lifetime with his potential in the Force. This is a landmark quote, due to the fact that Malgus was trained on Dromund Kaas, and Dromund Kaas was the primary capital world of the Sith Empire during Vitiate's reign. But there is another character that I would like to turn our attention to, Darth Vader, the hulkish titan of the dark side, formerly the hero with no fear of the Republic, Anakin Skywalker. Darth Vader was essentially a myriad version of Darth Magus, just more evolved, more Force-sensitive, and more powerful. But why did Vader look up to Malgus, and why was he Darth Vader's hero? Before we get into this, I pour a lot of effort into these videos and would greatly appreciate it if you shared it with your friends and liked and subscribed. If you wish to stop Emperor Vitiate's ruthless crusade around the galaxy, or holster Malgus in his false emperor ideology, then you've come to the right place. Just hit the subscribe button and the Force will once again be unified into balance. Now, my friends, let's proceed, Acolytes of the Force. Starting off, we have to mention that both Palpatine and Vader greatly admired Malgus, but they greatly admired them for different reasons. Palpatine primarily admired Malgus due to the fact that Malgus was essentially exactly what he wanted from Vader immediately after he figured out Vader had been maimed and burnt alive on Mustafar. Malgus was a hulking Sith brute, a tyrant with cybernetics embedded into his skin, wires coiling and curling like mechanical snakes out of his respirator, a suit of armor that was essentially invulnerable, along with his resolve, willpower, and flesh. Emperor Palpatine wanted a soldier, a pure warrior, a general to be able to govern his armies. And he wanted Vader to understand and fully comprehend that he was as useless as a pawn on a chessboard, and that he could effortlessly rid himself of him if the need arose. Vader certainly knew this, and so, in the early years of the Galactic Empire, in its waxing days, Palpatine, now the greatest owner of Sith artifacts that the galaxy had ever seen, displayed a plethora of these unique items to Vader, one of which was Darth Magus' journal, or at least the remnants that remained, that is documented in the Book of the Sith. This depicts Malgus' crusade across various worlds. His love interest was Alina Daru, a slave Twi'lek girl that he saved and eventually fell in love with, despite the Sith's disdain of interbreeding species. Malgus and Vader shared a lot in common, and Palpatine wanted to exploit this. He wanted Vader to see Malgus' staunch belief in the Sith ideology, their designs, and their methods, and cleanly severed any single ties Malgus had, or any doubts Malgus had, to the Sith. Palpatine wanted Malgus to mirror Vader, but he wanted Vader to grow and evolve. He wanted Vader to be as associated with the dark side, as immersed in the sea of eternal and perpetual power as Malgus had been. Malgus never wavered. From the moment he was born, he was a brute. He once murdered a slave girl on his biologist stepfather's farm just for the sake of it. Malgus was a hulking brute. And this is primarily why Palpatine admired him. But why did Darth Vader admire him? And why did Darth Vader see Malgus as his hero? To put it shortly, Darth Vader believed that Malgus was the perfect iteration of what a Sith could be. Vader believed that Malgus was a pure warrior, and essentially the purest and most perfect iteration of Darth Maul, if Darth Maul had reached his full potential, that it was, and had not been discarded by Palpatine and sliced in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. Darth Vader saw Malgus as the perfect Sith Lord, a staunch warrior who never wavered in his pursuit of more power, his everlasting rage that allowed him to unleash Force screams, bellows, and a myriad of unique other dark side abilities and talents that Vader, now maimed and weakened, could only ever dream and speculate of unleashing. He admired Malgus for his immense power in the dark side, his ability to generate unique force lightning, and even pioneer new abilities. Vader saw that Malgus was what he needed to become. Malgus had been a Sith warrior, bred for this purpose since he was a mere boy, and was abducted into the Sith Academy on Andromeda Cast at roughly the age of 6. Vader saw that he needed to expand on Malgus' teachings and documented a myriad and plethora of unique, different documentation into Malgus' war journal, with Malgus' war journal depicting his crusades and his feelings when some of the crusades failed and when some of the other ones were relishing success. Malgus relished the killing Jedi and relished the feeling of being on the battlefield, as did Vader. Vader was greatly able to emphasize with Malgus, as Vader understood that Malgus endured multiple series of pain and agony throughout his life, yet he was able to withstand it and build himself up stronger than ever every single time, whether it was a rocket, a grenade, a force attack, a lightsaber strike. Malgus always built himself back up, seemingly unstoppable, an implacable Sith Lord that could never be stopped. He was a staunch believer. Malgus seemingly could not be stopped. He was unstoppable on the battlefield, one of the greatest Sith war generals who had ever lived without a shadow of a doubt. And this was primarily why Darth Vader admired him. He emphasized with Darth Magus, because Malgus, like Vader, had to relinquish his lover, with Darth Vader accidentally murdering Padme utilizing a force choke, and Malgus intentionally impaling Alina Daru with his lightsaber as she lay in a hospital bed due to the fact he saw she was giving him weakness. Malgus bolstered himself on the death of Alina, fueling his rage, meaning that even in death, she was his most powerful weapon. Vader wanted to unlock this. He wanted to be able to do things that Malgus had done. He wanted to be able to have the rage and staunch focus that Malgus did. Vader wanted to be able to see the death of Padme as a way to further his dark side abilities and ways. He did not want to cry about it, but due to his psychological conditioning, this became increasingly more difficult, and it eventually became too much for Vader. He could no longer adhere to Malgus' teachings. Well, my friends, what did you think of this?
Darth Magus is one of the greatest Sith Lords in all of history, in my opinion. One of the greatest lightsaber duelists and sword masters to have ever been abducted into the Sith Order, utilizing a plethora of abilities that we have covered in multiple videos before. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Did you enjoy exploring why Darth Vader and Darth Sidious both greatly admired Darth Magus? And why, in a way, Darth Vader thought of Malgus as his idol and his hero, and the perfect iteration and personification of everything that Vader wanted to become. A staunch, merciless warrior who relished in killing on the battlefield, fully immersed in the darkness for eternity. Farewell, Sith Lords, and Jedi acolytes, spies, sons of Dathomir, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.